Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Seth Miranda here for AdoramaTV, and this is Replay Reply, the show where I take a look back at 12 years of Adorama content from all the channels, AdoramaTV, Adorama Events, the live channel, all of it, and take a look at your comments on the videos and see what questions you've had, what topics you've been trying to raise conversation about, and we talk about it. So let's kick it off with a pretty recent one with the Nikon Z6 III video. In fact, you're looking at me on a Nikon Z6 III recording this video right now, but I actually got to shoot it pre-released at a boxing gym here in Brooklyn where it was very challenging. Low light, flicker all over the place with different bulbs of all different sorts, different temperatures. It was not an easy lighting situation, but I wanted to shoot it in a situation that would be real life. You know, you're going to go shoot boxing at a gym. They're not going to have really great lights. You're not going to set up lights to shoot boxing if you're actually doing it. And so that's what I kind of did here. And I ended up getting a pretty high ISO. So we got a question from, oh, it's one of these, user-KV9BT6SD7R. Just sign in, just username, whatever. They ask, hello, sir. Are these 8,000 ISO photos JPEGs or RAW, and did you denoise them with one of these emojis? You know, well, first of all, no, they're not denoised. And I was at 8,000 ISO at about f2, I think I say in this video, because I was also trying to get to a shutter speed that wouldn't have motion blur. We wanted to see how the autofocus worked, all that. You guys can check out the video on your own accord, but 8,000 ISO, these were JPEGs in this video, and no, I didn't use any denoise because when we get these cameras for first look videos, they're usually pre-released, prototypes, beta models, all sorts of things that aren't actual production models. That means raw files might not be finalized. That means there might not be software that even opens up the raw file in a third party like Capture One, Lightroom, whatever. And so you're usually shooting JPEGs in this situation. And when I get the new cameras in my hand and I know I'm going to be shooting JPEGs, I go through whatever is inside the menus of the camera that are going to do something to the image quality after the fact, meaning I take off the denoise, the diffraction compensation, you know, all the sorts of things that they try to put inside the camera to smooth over anything like the noise in an image and see what we actually get. Because I believe that's really the purpose of those videos, is to give you guys an example of what you're going to get out of the camera, or translate the specs so that they make sense to you and give you an application that you would apply the idea and philosophy of this camera to in the field. And if you're going to be shooting a 24 megapixel sensor and they're claiming it's got pretty clean high ISO, that's what we ended up doing, right? We shot action in a low light, challenging situation, and we got you some images that you could take a look at. And yeah, they did pretty good with the JPEGs. Some rare cases with some of these cameras, we can shoot raw and then in camera process them to JPEG. But most of the time, if not all the time, we're shooting so quickly to get these videos up for you guys. There's just no time for that kind of stuff. And we're getting the camera that day and the camera is leaving that day as well. So we have to get moving on this. And that's usually what you guys are seeing, are JPEGs right out of camera instead of a raw file. And that's usually what you'll see after the camera has been announced and in people's hands. You'll start seeing raw files out there and what they give you in that regard as well. Also, don't forget that a lot of people do shoot JPEG, contrary to belief. A lot of sports shooters, news shooters, people are just shooting JPEG, getting whatever color profiles and everything they want processed in camera right off of that sensor, right into that card or to wire, and getting it to their publication or whatever they're trying to get it to, because that's how things really work that fast. So the JPEGs are pretty relevant as well, not just raw files. I feel like that was a bit of a tangent, but I think that's also kind of what this show is. All right, let's jump over to a rather older video, the Fujifilm GFX 100, the original, the OG. Back in 2019, we went to Tokyo, Japan to try out a prototype, a beta of the GFX 100, and I got hand poke tattooed, and I ended up shooting portraits of the tattoo artist, which was pretty awesome. That aside, Penumbra 547S, nice video. What's the bracket used to mount the ProPhoto modifiers? Thanks. So kind of funny. In this video, it was so long ago, it was at a time where there was no adapter for ProPhoto speedlights. They were at the time the only ones making a round head speedlight, and there really wasn't that much as way of options to modify it with the boxes I wanted to use. And I say that because I want to use certain ProPhoto boxes, certain modifiers, and while there were brackets that I could finagle to work a little bit, it wasn't that ideal for me. So this is DIY solutions, and this is what we always used to do. All us small flash people that were out there shooting in the field with off-camera speed lights, before there really was like a movement to making that a thing, because there really wasn't. It was on camera and that was about it. Nobody was really trying to mount them to things with modifiers and use them like that. You know, Joe McNally definitely pushed and pioneered a lot of that, but then it became kind of, you know, not, I don't want to say accepted, but, or a phenomenon, but it was definitely more the norm out there for people to start doing this more and more. And then you started seeing manufacturers and brands make soft boxes directly for speed lights, or modify adapters that let you use your bigger modifiers on speed lights, or even mount them to stands like that. So this was just a bunch of parts. I mean, there was like an old speed ring in there, some sheet metal, I'm sure, a cold shoe with a random, you know, quarter 20 knob on there, whatever I could figure out to get a flash on a shoe, point it in a box and get it onto a stand. And luckily now we have modifier adapters. The ProPhoto OCF2 is out. There's plenty of third-party brands that make stuff. And whatever flash system you are in, there has got to be some sort of modifier system for those lights, or an adapter to bridge the gap between the larger light modifiers and speed lights. So just check that out. If you're in like Flashpoint or something like that, I guarantee you there's solutions. But back then I had to figure something out, and that's kind of what I figured out. And it's something I was very, very used to from way back in the day as well, before there was anything like this at all. Let's change things up a little bit and hop into one of Daniel Norton's videos. And Daniel does a great job of answering his comments and questions, but I can't keep answering my own videos. And Daniel, I know you'll let me off the hook on this one. He did a great video on why use high-speed sync for portraits. And there's a question here from Guma Anthony 2904. Does crop sensors work well with high-speed sync? First of all, what's high-speed sync? In the craziest nutshell, super, you know, condensed. Don't jump down my throat on this one. But high-speed sync is basically a mode in which your strobe goes into once you exceed the maximum shutter speed for flash sync. And this happens because I don't think people realize shutter doesn't work the way you think it does, where it's like, it's not like that. Yes, there's global. Yes, there's leaf shutters. We're not going to talk about that right now. Right now, we're talking about focal plane shutters, which most cameras are going to have. And when you have something like this is your sensor and you take a shot, your shutter opens, and then a second curtain, another shutter comes down right in front of that, right after that other shutter. So it's a front curtain and a rear curtain. You know, you've heard these things, right? Well, the faster you go, the sooner that second curtain comes into play and chases the front curtain. So when you get to a few thousandths of a second, it's going to be right behind it. So it turns into like a little slit that is then rolling down the sensor or film plane to make a proper exposure. The problem is that when you're doing strobe, when you take that shot, bang, flash, and we're still rolling, you're only going to get the segment that got exposed during that slit and not the entire way. The way high-speed sync works is by pulsating to be like flash, 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 as that slit goes down the sensor plane to piece together the exposure for the entire image. Flash, 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 as opposed to flash, and then part of the or half the frame is black, right? So now you're asking, does it work well with crop sensor? Well, it's not really about the sensor size. Yes, it is a shorter travel than full frame or medium format or something like that, but it's not about the sensor size. It's more about, can the high-speed sync exist as far as your flash syncing communication-wise with your camera to pulsate that flash when it needs to be pulsated for the faster shutter speed? And can it maintain it enough for the duration of that travel? Most cases, yeah. You know, there are a lot of things you should check to make sure it'll work properly, like the firmware in both your camera and your strobe. And that's the era that we're in. A lot of things are computer ran, you know. So this is kind of more of a thing about the communication between the camera system and the strobe system than it is about the sensor size itself. About the only thing you're going to have difference is the length of travel, but we're splitting hairs here at that point. And yes, there's other methods other than high-speed sync for this. We're not going to get into that because I got to keep this moving, guys. let's jump back into a video I did for the release of the ProPhoto B10X and B10X Plus. These are monolight strobes, battery powered, that also have pretty high output modeling lights that are bicolor. So I probably talked about how the range of going from 3200K to 6500K, you know, warm to cool. And Brad and YYC, who is an OG member of this community, thanks for sticking with the channel, buddy. He's asking, you said you turned it all blue at 6500K, but when I'm in Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever, 6500K is warm. Why the difference between the lights and the white balance? You can see that in camera 2. To get the white balance warm, you would go to 6500K or whatever. Yeah, so while the light temperature, let's say you're talking about tungsten light, that warm, orangey type light, 3200K, 3400K, something around there. Yes, the light is 3200K and that is orange. But in your camera, if you set it to 3200K, your image starts looking blue. That's because it's counterbalancing. It's trying to get to white. So instead, it's not trying to put more orange in there. It's trying to put blue in there to counteract for the 3200K. So if my light is rated at 3200 Kelvin and I put into my white balance in my camera 3200 Kelvin, then it knows how much cool tone to pump up in there to then get me back to white in the middle. That's really what you're seeing. You're not seeing that, oh, I set my camera to 6500K. It should be bluer. Like, no, it's going to give you the warmer because it's trying to get you back to zero, back to white. It's trying to get you to the value that matches the light that you're in, not the light. You're not creating the light inside the camera, you're capturing the light. So it's got to be set to what's rated for the sources you are capturing pretty much, right? So yeah, I guess it can be confusing, and I have actually heard this question over the years, but really white balance is just that, balance, and that could include counterbalancing. That could include, you know, compensating one of the other to get you back to a white value. So that's kind of what that means. Is that I know it's kind of confusing, like you're going opposite, but you're not really going opposite. You're just seeing a real-time visual representation of how much it's compensating to get you back to a midpoint of white. I think I'm going to leave it there for this one. Keep it nice and concise, but we'll keep these going. You know what's going on. Hit me with a comment down below if you guys have any questions, but also go check out the rest of this channel and pop some questions on some videos you didn't check out before, or maybe you're looking at them years later after you've grown so much as a creator and there's things for you to look at differently. I don't care what you guys shoot brand-wise, format-wise, what style, what genre. Every video on this channel has some kind of education point in it. Even if it's a new product video, there's an application in that video trying to show you guys something. So go explore, and don't forget to hit the subscribe on the Adorama Events channel for live demos where you can jump in the chat and ask questions in real time on the spot, and we steer things for you guys. So thank you so much for being part of this channel. You can follow me at LastXWitness on all social. Check out my work on Instagram and all that stuff. And don't forget to hit like on this video, hit subscribe and the bell so you get notified when I put more videos like this. And I'll see you next time, guys. Later.